Hello, welcome to Apex Math. Today we are going to continue with our lesson on exponents. Previously we have looked in the first two lessons. We looked at the addition rule, where if we had x to the fourth times x to the third, we'd get x to the seventh. We looked at the multiplication rule, where if we had a power to a power, we'd multiply and get x to the 12th. And we looked at dividing exponents, where if we had x to the 5th over x squared, we would subtract exponents and get x to the 3rd. Or if we had x squared over x to the 5th, we would get 1 over x to the 3rd. Now we're going to go and look at negative exponents. When I tell students to think about negative exponents, I tell them to think about an apartment building and pretend that you have a bunch of tenants, and the tenants live on either the top floor of the building or the bottom floor of the building. And whether or not the tenant is happy on the floor depends on the sign of their exponent. So if they have a negative exponent, they are unhappy. And if they have a positive exponent, they're happy. And remember, he would have an exponent of 1, even though we don't write it. And so he is happy. Anyone with a negative exponent has asked his landlord to please move to the opposite floor of the building where he's at. So the A tenant wants to move from the top floor to the bottom floor. Once he moves there, he becomes happy, which means his exponent goes from being a negative to a positive. The D also wants to move, so he moves from the bottom floor to the top floor, and now his exponent changes from a negative to a positive. The B was already a positive exponent, so he was happy, and the C was positive, so he was happy, and the E was positive, so he was happy. So now all the exponents are positive, and the problem is complete. So let's try a different one. All right, if we look at this one, again, the first thing we want to do is make everybody who has a negative exponent move floors to turn them into happy tenants. So let's circle anybody who needs to move. Let's write all the guys who have the positive exponents down. So the X and the Z were fine, and the Y and the Z down here were fine. But this Y on the top floor wanted to move to the bottom floor. So he's going to move down here, and now he has a positive exponent. And this X, who was down on the bottom floor, wants to move to the top floor. So now he moves up there, and now he has a positive exponent. Now in this case, we're not done, because as you can see, we have more than one X, more than one Y, and more than one Z. So we still need to simplify. So let's go ahead and work on that. So if we look at our X's, let's circle all of our X's. Here's an X, and here's an X. So what's the relationship between these? Well, these are sitting right next to each other, so they are multiplied, and so the rule for that is to add their exponents. So they're going to become x to the 2 plus 3, or x to the 5th. Now let's go to the y's next. So the y's are down here, there's a y to the fourth and a y to the third. Again, they're on the same level and they're next to each other. They both have a base, so we're going to add their exponents. So they're going to become y to the 7th. Now the last variable we need to talk about are the z's. So we have a z to the 4th here and a z to the 5th here. They're on opposite levels, so this is a division problem rather than a multiplication problem. So we subtract the exponents, so we do 5 minus 4 equals 1, but then we have to look at which one has the extras. Is it on the top or the bottom? And the bottom has the larger number, so the z stays on the bottom with the leftovers. So our final answer is x to the 5th, y to the 7th, z. All right, let's give you one to try. All right, so pause your video and go ahead and try this problem and then start it back up when you're done. All right, let's go ahead and do this together. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to move everything with a negative exponent to make the exponents positive. So this guy has to move, this guy has to move, this guy has to move, and this guy has to move. So let's write the ones that don't have to move. And now we'll move the ones that do. So the y to the negative 4 is going to go down. The z to the negative 2 is going to go down. The y to the negative 2 is going to go up. And the z to the negative 5 is going to go up. All right. So now we are ready to simplify. So now we look for common x's, common y's, and common z's. And in this case, every situation is a division problem. They're all on top of each other. So we have 2 x's on top and 8 on the bottom. So that means the larger, the leftovers are on bottom. 8 minus 2 is 6. So the x's end up down below with x to the 6th. Then I'm going to check my y's. I have 4 y's on the bottom and 2 on top, so the leftovers are going to be on the bottom. 4 minus 2 is 2. Lastly, I check my z's. Here, the bigger number's on top, so the z is going to go on top with the leftovers. 5 minus 2 is 3. So your final answer is z to the 3rd, x to the 6th, y squared. All right, let's do one more. I'm going to combine some of the other things you've learned from the previous lesson. All right, go ahead and pause the video and see how you do with this one. All right, hope you took it slow and remember to break down each piece as we've learned to do in the different videos. The first thing we have to do is remember to put a 1 here on the 2, and then we're going to distribute this 3, because it's a power to each one of these. So we end up with 2 to the 3rd, x to the 6th, and let's just go ahead and move this guy right now down here, x to the 4th, Then we're going to go to the next guy, y to the 6. He stays up top. Then we're going to go down here. We're going to 6. Numbers always go in front of letters, so I'm going to put him in the very front there. He needs to move up, so I'm going to put him up top, x squared. And the y to the 3rd, he needs to go up top. So notice all I did was address each one of these one at a time and made sure I put them in the place that they needed to go. Now I need to combine the like pieces. So first of all, 2 to the 3rd is 8, so let's take care of that. And now I have 8 over 6. And remember, that's just a fraction that I reduce. 2 goes into both of those. 2 goes into 6 3 times. 2 goes into 8 4 times. So I have 4 over 3. Now I'm going to look for my x's. I have an x to the 6th. I have an x squared. And I have an x to the 4th. So these two here first, I'm going to add those. And I'm going to get x to the 6 plus 2 is 8. And now I'm going to address that x to the 8th with the x to the 4th. So that leaves me subtracting with 4 leftovers on top. So that takes care of him and him. It's often helpful if you can cross off as you go along so you know who you've taken care of and who you haven't. Then lastly, I have to deal with the y's. I have a y here and a y here. They're sitting next to each other on the same level, so I'm multiplying them, which means I add their exponents. So I have y to the 6 plus 3 is 9. So the final answer is 4x to the 4th, y to the 9th over 3. I know this one was a little bit challenging. Hopefully you got it. If not, work through it again. And make sure you come back and visit us for our next lesson. We will build on this and work with some more with our negative exponents in our next lesson. Thank you for staying with Apex Math.